after the session today. So just be aware of that. If you miss or have to jump offline for any purpose, we'll send that out via email as a link. So good afternoon. My name is Caroline Player. I'm the Director of Alumni Career Services at the Georgia Tech Alumni Association, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today for the second of our Career Conversations webinars. We hope you will join us in the future in December, and then we've got plans in the works for the new year as well. So hope to see you online many times ongoing for some different interesting topics. Because we have a number of you online, we're muting all the participants during the course of the webinar, but we do want this to be interactive. To send messages or questions to Hallie or myself, please open your chat window and communicate with us there. We will try to get everyone's questions within the time frame we have allotted, but we do want to be respectful of everyone's time on the call. This is going to be about 45 minutes today. So without delay, let me get to introducing our speaker and leader, Hallie Crawford. And we are in for a treat today. Hallie is a coach, speaker, and author from Atlanta whose coaching company, HallieCrawford.com, helps people find their dream job. She moved to Atlanta about 10 years ago from Chicago to escape the cold, be closer to her family, and as her southern uncle says, put some South in her mouth. She has not yet developed a Southern accent, but we'll see. For the past 12 years, Hallie and her team of coaches have helped people of all ages worldwide to achieve their career goals. She's published numerous books, including Career Transition Tips for Singles and her Identify Your Ideal Career Path workbook. She's regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including on CNN, Fox Business News, and the Wall Street Journal. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, Hallie.
No problem. I am excited to be here. And 45 minutes is perfect because then we all have a chance to go have lunch afterwards too, which is important. All right, so thanks everyone for being here today. We really appreciate your time, and we're going to be talking about the #1 mistake job seekers make. At least the #1 mistake that I find. I'm sure we could argue that there's a few more, but this is the #1 mistake that I find in our clients that job seekers make. So here's the deal. The #1 mistake, I'll tell you about it in just a moment. I'm going to be like a game show host here for a moment and keep it a secret for a couple more seconds. But this #1 mistake we're going to talk about today is a tool that not enough people use in their search. Many of us are too shy to use it. This is me on the left here, I was too shy to use it after college. I was living in my mom's basement and I didn't have any confidence. It was going to be too hard for me to use this tool. And still, well, after school, I was still shy then. I'm actually more introverted than extroverted. So putting myself out there for a job search was hard, even years later. And we're going to talk about the obstacles that people encounter to using, or the reason why they don't use this tool in a little bit as well. So here's the deal. Today, I still have to push myself sometimes because I am more introverted than extroverted. But luckily, I'm much less shy, having had my own business for 12 years. And I've learned to put myself out there and use my moments of being extroverted to my advantage. And I'm glad I've learned to do that because the tool we're talking about today requires you all to put yourself out there and will help you enormously leverage the hidden job market. So what is this #1 mistake that people make? This is what I find in my clients, and Caroline, if you've got some other examples too, please feel free to share. But what I have found is, that not enough people leverage informational interviews in their job search. And what I have found is either they're not using them enough, sometimes people are not using them at all, or they don't use them correctly. And I would say that about only 50% of our clients actually know what an informational interview is. And only about 30%, maybe less, use them correctly. A lot of people don't even use them correctly. Do you find that, Caroline, with the people you work with?
I find that is definitely true, Hallie. In fact, just as and I think oftentimes people are intimidated about how to approach or how to phrase things right, so that they're really, asking for an informational interview. When done correctly, I just had an example earlier this week of a client that was interested in working for a marketing agency who we worked on some phrasing for connecting with people in that industry at a hiring level for her in particular. And the first person that she reached out to just simply request time and an opportunity for an information exchange accepted. So that was first thing on the books that she'd had in a while.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great point, that a lot of people will also ask me, how do I say it? Like, they really need to get down to the nitty-gritty about what language do I use. And so a little bit further along, everyone, in the presentation today, I'm going to give you an example of how you could phrase an email. But please feel free to ask more questions about these, nuts and bolts, because that's where I find people fall down. They'll be like, okay, fine, I'll do it. You've talked me into it. But then they're like, oh, well, I don't know what to say, and I want to make sure I sound professional. So everyone, please ask along the way as we go. If you have specific questions about the nitty-gritty, we'd be happy to answer. And, Caroline, I know you're going to have some great advice about it, too. So the number one mistake, as we said, is informational interviews. And we are going to talk today specifically about how to set them up. I'll show you where we're going on our agenda in just a moment. But for a second, I want to talk with you about why this is so important. Why do we even care about informational interviews in the first place? So first of all, informational interviews are a critical piece to leveraging the hidden job market. And I'm sure that most of you on the call have heard about it before. It's not this, sometimes I think that, and Caroline, you may experience this too, that sometimes I think when a client comes to me, they think I have a magic wand, or like there's a magic website or something that, I know about jobs that they don't. Not at all. So the hidden job market, 70 to 80%, and this is actually in the notes for today, in the marketing material for today, that the statistics show that about 70 to 80% of those jobs that are landed or secured out there are found through the hidden job market. So to have the greatest impact in your search, everyone, you must leverage it. Now, yes, people do find jobs by applying online. It happens. I had a client yesterday, he's here in Atlanta, Josh, and he actually, a company approached him, a recruiter did, for a job, and he has his third interview, or just did this morning, and expects to get the offer, which is great. And he got that interview by posting his resume on an industry-specific job board. So it does happen that way. But the statistics show, as it says on this slide, that the majority of those jobs gotten out there are through the hidden job market. So you absolutely need to spend the majority of your time through networking, and informational interviews is a great tool for networking, which is what we'll talk about today. So just so you all know, I'm sure you've heard of it before, and most of you probably know how to define or what the hidden job market is that they are unadvertised positions that either are found through networking or through headhunters. And there was this great story. I attended a conference several years ago, and the speaker was talking about, think about it this way. If you're a hiring manager and you need someone, do you want to march all the way down to HR, write up a job description, go through a search, or wouldn't it be easier to just walk around the office first, at least try this strategy, and say, hey, we need someone to help us with this. Do you know anyone? That's the hidden job market. That's the networking. Because a lot of times you could understand a hiring manager wanting to just do that because it would be a lot easier, right? So the hidden job market is something that's a critical piece. Caroline, have I missed anything like ways to leverage the hidden job market? To me, it's the headhunters and networking. Is that right by you?
I think that, yes, absolutely. The networking piece, huge, and yes, absolutely. The headhunter that is out there aware of something that is not out there otherwise on job boards is important too. And making yourself available for, connections within your network, but also via LinkedIn, where a lot of these headhunters might be out there looking for you, and how to find candidates that might be specific to the job openings they're working on.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, because I was actually thinking about it too. I've actually had at least 5 clients in the past 2 years where they were contacted directly through LinkedIn, either through from the employer or a recruiter, and again, those jobs were not advertised and they were handpicked. And I talked to a recruiter And this was actually 3 years ago, so I'm sure the number or percentage is even higher. He says he spends about 10 hours a day on LinkedIn trying to find candidates because they can go hand kind of pick who they want to talk to. It's so much easier. So, okay, good. All right, so the hidden job market, we get why it's important. All right, so here's the deal with informational interviews. As I said a moment ago, what we need to know and understand everyone about them is the before, the during, and the after. So the basic process is, how do I set them up? What do I say? Where do I find people? How do I handle myself during the course of the informational interview? How long should they be, etc. And then what do I do afterwards? And again, as I said a moment ago, I find that our clients, you know, at least 70% of them either don't know how to conduct a piece of them or they don't know the complete process from A to Z. And there is a process. I mean, I would say definitely that it's the language you use obviously is going to be situational, and how you handle it is going to be situational. So remember, everyone, we're going to give you a framework here today, but you need to adjust it to your situation. But these will give you some kind of basic parameters and rules for it, okay? All right, so first, let's talk about the obstacles for a moment, because this is these are the things I typically hear from people about why they don't want to do it. And Caroline, when we're done with this, feel free to share if you've heard any of these too. So, like, especially our mid-career or older, more experienced clients are like, oh, those are for young people right out of college. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't feel comfortable asking for help. And some people are just flat out too shy, and they're more introverted, and that's understandable, and it's something to kind of get over that obstacle. So I feel like it's a completely understandable, these reasons are understandable, but you've got to get past them. Caroline, have you heard any other reasons why people don't want to do it?
I think you're exactly right on there, Hallie. I don't recall any others except for it usually is I don't either want to ask for help or that I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing. But it's to transition even moderately into a new industry is going to, there is going to be a gap of things that you'd like to get yourself up to speed on, or even a new company culture, and people understand that. So while I, like you, understand the fear that people may have, but it is perfectly reasonable, and I think it would be received as perfectly reasonable when you're trying to explore a new company, industry, or even something new within your own line of work.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I think one of the, kind of obstacles for my clients too, they'll think, well, someone's not going to know what I'm talking about. And to your point, most people, everyone, they will know what an informational interview is.
Yes.
And if they don't, you just explain it for a second and say, I just would like to chat with you for a few minutes and to learn more for information. And so if they don't know, it's something that's understandable and kind of understood that this is what we do and this is how networking works. And normally, the clients that I have that use this, they're so well received. Like, they get great information, and people aren't put out. I mean, the worst case, if you ask everybody, is they ignore you or they say no. Like, who cares? You just move on to the next person. It's kind of like a law of sales, I think, however many no's you have to get to or go through to get to a yes. But just do please know, bottom line, everyone, that this is an understandable thing. People get this. It's just kind of the way it works.
And completely, don't be, to your point, Hallie, don't be tied to the words informational interview. Just an information exchange where people, you have the chance to learn from someone about X and get some of their recommendations. And absolutely truth that most people, if they have the time or if they've paid enough attention to your email or whatever it is at that time, they are perfectly receptive, especially if you leverage connections with a familiarity. You have another Georgia Tech alum that you reach out to, or someone else that's in a professional association that you're also a member of. That commonality lots of times helps to build a bridge.
Yeah, enormously. That's so good. And sorry about, I switched the slide by accident. My mouse is touchier today than I expected. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So what we're going to talk about today, everyone, is three basic steps for effective informational interviews. And I showed you before a second ago. We're going to talk about the before, the during, and after. And like we said, if you have questions along the way, Caroline's going to monitor the chat box and interrupt. We can answer things as needed as we go. So 3 basic steps. And the first thing is, so right before we get to the first step is two slides I want to show you. First, this is how an informational interview is defined. So it's a one-on-one conversation, in-person, phone, Skype. By the way, I like Skype these days because if someone is far away, if you can do something that's either in person or Skype, it makes a stronger connection with them. So if that's ever possible, I would highly recommend it. But you really need to go with what works for the other person because you're the one that, you want to make it easy on them. So, but if you can do Skype, I think that's a really cool option. And so there's kind of 2 reasons why you would do this, everyone. It's going to be with someone who works in an industry that you're interested in, that you want to either break into, or it's your current industry, but you want to expand your network. Or you might be contacting them to learn more about the company where they work. So it could be industry specific, or it could be company specific, either way. That's part of what Caroline was saying a couple minutes ago. So this is how it's defined and what the purpose is, okay? And just something real quick to be very clear about it. You need to be very clear with the person that you're asking for information. You're not asking for a job, because they'll be much less likely to talk to you if they think that's the point of this. Now look, yes, people realize that when you're doing this, you're looking to expand your network, and yes, of course, you'd love to get a job in some way through them or through one of their connections. So it's kind of like we all know how this works. But if you take the pressure off and you explain to them, look, I really am just looking for information, it's going to make a huge difference in their response to you. They'll be more likely to respond. Does that make sense, Caroline?
It certainly does.
Okay. All right, and how they help. So these are the reasons that you could, right here on this slide, that you could, leverage, or why you would want to leverage informational interviews. So lots of reasons here on this slide. Help you determine your next career path or your next move, whether it's a change of industry or staying put. Figuring out if a company or a specific role would be a good fit for you. So in some ways, it doesn't have to be just used for job search only, like you're ready to make a move into a new path. It could be used for investigational purposes, to learn about this different path and find out if it's right for you. This second to last one here is underlined because this is the main reason why people will use it in their job search, to network their way into an organization. And finally, another good kind of benefit of it, or how they help, is you get to practice your interview skills. You're not on a formal interview, but you need to treat it as such. You need to, make a really good impression with them, but it's a chance for you in a lower pressure way to talk about yourself and kind of practice those interview skills. Anything to add here, Caroline? Does that all make sense?
I think it's definitely a two-way street. I actually was talking about just this topic yesterday with one of the GT current classes, and we delved into the topic of it being a two-way street, that you're certainly, looking to find out information, and you're able to practice your skills and kind of get your ideas and your purpose out there, but at the same time, you're certainly building those connections and rapport that might be appropriate for a job referral later down the line.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to piggyback on that, everyone, we talked about how many jobs are secured through the hidden job market and networking. Networking takes more time. It's more time consuming. It's longer. It is much more satisfying to sit behind your computer and say, I applied for 10 jobs today online. Like, I totally get that. That's so much more rewarding in a way. But it's the lowest rate of return for you. So it's okay to do that, everyone. You want to keep that in your bucket, in your wheelhouse, apply for jobs online, okay, fine. But realize that the networking, it is going to take more time and effort, but it tends to pay the highest dividends. And you do. You kind of need to be patient with it because you've got to develop those relationships over time. when I met with a woman, this was years ago when I was kind of a novice to networking, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I need to help her in some way in return, like right away, but I'm so young and I have nothing to offer her. She said to me, she said, that's not how it is. It's relationship building. Eventually it'll come around again, Hallie, but don't put that pressure on it. You always want to ask them and try to help them in any way you can, everyone, but also don't put the pressure on it either, and realize that it's relationship building, it takes time. Okay, so let's go to the first step here. Step number 1, the setup, okay? And the first thing you have to do to set them up, obviously, is find connections and people to talk to. So here's my list here. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. Here's my list here of ways to find contacts. And Caroline just mentioned this a few minutes ago. It was perfect. The Alumni Association, you'll see, is 4th down. A lot of alumni associations, and I believe, Georgia, check, Caroline, you guys have an active LinkedIn association group. Is that right?
That's right. We have about 32,000 LinkedIn group members. And so if all of you on the call have not yet joined, just pop in and to our gtalumni.org. You can connect directly there. Look for the IN logo, and you can join our group immediately.
Yeah, that is a huge number. And I just had a client yesterday. I spoke to her yesterday. She sent me an email this morning. She said she reached out to her alumni association, and she has found at least 20 people who are in the industry that she's interested in to talk to, and she's over the moon. I mean, it's a gold mine that people tend to forget about. So lots of ways to do this, everyone. Look through your current contacts. Start with the warm, friends and family and current contacts first. You can start with a couple of people that you know and practice on them. It's a great way to kind of get warmed up with the other people later on that might actually have the job opening. So start with your warm leads first, because it will build your confidence over time. LinkedIn connections, LinkedIn groups. I had a client in Chicago. She reached out to a woman who was in her industry-specific LinkedIn group, who they had corresponded back and forth and just happened to participate a lot in their LinkedIn group. She reached out to her to do an informational interview. It went beautifully. Networking groups and association meetings. You can also meet people in person in order to establish these connections. And even in that moment in person, you could say, hey, could I chat with you for a few more minutes after the meeting is over, or another time? And you can set up informational interviews that way as well. So it can be virtually, but it also can be in person too. And I think this pretty much covers the groups. I mean, obviously, there are other groups and ways you could find people. I've had clients go to meetup groups, meetup.com. And I actually had a client, Justin, who moved, he was in Boston, and he went to like a Red Sox viewing party. I hope it's the Boston Red Sox. Yes, it's embarrassing. I'm not a sports fanatic. I had to double check that. But he went to a social event, and one of the people he met afterwards sent him like 10 job openings. So we should actually put on here like ways that you connect with people socially, or sometimes potential informational interview connections. Okay, so Caroline, does that cover it, you think?
I think that does cover it, yes.
All right, cool. Okay, so well, we're still on step 1. But in the setup, but the next thing you need to do under step 1, obviously, is then make the ask. So you find 1 or 2 people that you want to reach out to. Here is a basic formula or template at the bottom of the slide, everyone, that you can use in order to send them an email or call them. Now, if it's in person, this is, you want to use a variation of this, obviously. They already know who you are and your background probably, so you launch into the, can I have a few minutes of your time? But if you're sending an email or you're making a phone call, these are the things you want to cover. Now, I personally prefer for people to send an email first, and then if they need to call to follow up because they haven't heard back from the person, that's better. I think it's a little awkward to call someone and put them on the spot this way, so that would at least be my recommendation. And you want to introduce yourself, give them your name, obviously, how you found out about them, so they kind of know what the connection is, what your background is and situation. I'm an ex-industry my situation is I'm, in the job market, what you're looking for from them, looking for a few minutes of your time. And this is a key point, and then Caroline, add to this if needed or change it. But at the bottom where it says include the times available, it's something I always tell people to do and they tend to forget. Put right in that initial email, everyone, the times that you're available and days in the next couple of weeks. Make it easy on them and get the ball rolling. Don't make them rifle through their calendar and just make stuff up. Give them some specific times and days that work. It'll make it easier for them to respond.
I completely agree, Hallie. That, that back and forth when you're setting up an appointment time with someone and it's kind of like, can we meet? Yes. What time would you like to meet? I would like to meet here. Oh, that doesn't work. A lot of times just purely lost in a more lengthy setup can really squelch a conversation that would have otherwise been quite good. So, and not anybody's fault. It just sort of loses interest or loses steam.
Yeah, so do make it easy because to your point, the administration, you can get bogged down in it. And I moved to the next slide, not to cut you off, Caroline, but I wanted this to be up long enough in the recording so that you all have an example of how you could word an email. So this is an email that I've just written up and used with clients. You can adjust it, okay, like we talked about earlier, but this is a basic format that you could use in order to get this set up, okay? So just take a look at this, everybody. We'll leave it up for a moment so that we've got it on the recording. And then, Caroline, do you see anything that I may have missed here or need to change or tweak, or what do you think?
No, I think this sounds great. Okay. You're introducing yourself, a little bit about your background, just the amount of time that they would sort of be giving to you, and those, like you said, the availability.
Okay, good. And I just, by the way, everyone, I always suggest 15 to 20 minutes. A lot of people will give you more time. Many of my clients, when they talk with someone, they get a full hour from someone. But I always like to err on the side of being short and sweet and shorter because the person will be more likely to get back with you if they know that you're not going to take advantage of too much of their time. We're all busy. And so just know that, you can ask for this amount of time. You'll probably get more and be prepared for more. But if they start to wrap it up at around this time frame, then it's time to move on. Just keep going. Okay, so that's a template you can use. And then the one last thing under step 1 with the ask I like people to do or suggest that they do is once it's set up, I like to have people send, like, here are the 5 questions I'd like to cover. When people do informational interviews with me, everybody, I love this because then I know, A, these are the questions we're going to cover. I can prepare for them if I want to, and I know that I'm going to help them because I know exactly what they need to know. And then I also know, too, they're not going to try to ask me 20 questions and, like, take 2 hours of time. So I love having the questions in advance. I always suggest that. All right, so let's go to step number 2. Obviously, we need to then conduct the informational interview, so we'll focus on that in the next couple of moments here. So here are some basic tips for this, okay? And I'll give you a quick story about this too. So you need to stick to the time you agreed to, dress professionally, even if it's Skype, okay? Make sure your background is okay and all of that. Have your resume handy and up to date just to be safe. And like we said before, act like it's an interview. So I had a woman contact me to do an informational interview. She was interested in being a coach. And boy, she was persistent. At first, I was like, okay, I can talk with you on the phone. She said, no, do you mind if we do it in person? Okay, fine. We made a mutually agreed upon time. It worked great. But she dressed professionally. She had her resume, and I was blown away, so blown away. I hired her as an intern, and I was not planning on that, okay? So this is something that you want to make sure, like I said, act like it's an interview because you just never know what could come out of it, all right? Caroline, does that all make sense?
That does. I think that's great.
Okay, so these are some tips for during, all right? And then at the end, I wanted to make sure we covered this too. So at the end, after you've covered your 5 or so questions, you want to always ask them, how can I help you? We mentioned that earlier. Is there anyone else that I could talk to? So you're always looking for additional people that, you could network with. They may say no, and that's okay. Don't take offense to that. They just might not know anybody in the moment. But always ask them, too, May I stay in touch with you, and what's the best way to do that? So if you feel that they're going to be a strong, good networking connection for you, design how you can stay in touch with them. Ask permission, and then find out, is it okay with you if I email you periodically and keep you updated, or ask you a question? Just be direct with them, because then you'll feel less awkward later on about staying in touch with them because you put it right out there. Okay? And then the last thing, and I think, I put this a little bit later in one of the next slides, but I'll say it now too in case. If you want to connect with them on LinkedIn, and you can ask them if that's okay with them if you want to, but make sure that you always connect with people on LinkedIn. A lot of my clients will forget that piece of it, but that's part of expanding your network. And then the only other thing I might say, and then Caroline, if you've got more to add, feel free, but sometimes it can be helpful, everyone, if you can at least look through this person's LinkedIn connections, and maybe you do it afterwards. I actually think it might be better after you connect with them after the informational interview. I think it's perfectly acceptable to look through their LinkedIn connections. And if you see one or two people that you would like to be, connected with through them, it's okay to ask. Yes. I tell my clients this all the time. They'll say, do you know anyone in XYZ? And I'm like, I'm not going to remember necessarily who I'm connected with on LinkedIn. So I always tell them, go ahead and look through them, and if I can make the intro, I will.
Completely, and I actually have a good example of that just from a recent exchange with an alum. When a person, was speaking back and forth with a close connection about people that they may know in X company, it helps this person to do that, look through those contacts, because of all the changes and all the contacts people make over the years. Sometimes they aren't aware, for example, that that person might now be working at GTRI or has made a recent job change to an industry that the networking contact is interested in. So that is a good point that we just remember. Looking through that might help refresh someone's memory of, oh yeah, I do know someone there. Thank you for mentioning that to me.
Yeah, we don't always remember or know about the change. Great point. Yep. Okay, so make sure that you have these closing, kind of comments and questions at the end, everyone. And then let's move to step 3 for a moment here. So we've got 2 slides about the follow-up, okay? How do we follow up with people? Well, obviously, we're going to write a handwritten thank you note, okay? Connect with them on LinkedIn, like we said. Follow up with any referrals that they've sent you. So if they, connected you with Joe at GE or whatever, reach out to that person, obviously, and keep the original connection posted. So you need to let whoever introduced you to Joe in the first place, let him know how it went. And this is where an Excel spreadsheet to maintain and keep track of your LinkedIn, your networking connections and meetings that you have with people in any conversation is critical, because you'll get lost in the weeds if you don't keep track of who I met with, where did we meet, what did we talk about, what was the date, and what's the follow-up. An Excel sheet for this is fantastic. And Caroline, actually what I will do is, when I send you, if it's okay before you send the recording, I will provide everyone with a link to download a sample Excel sheet that will help you with your search. So let's include that when we send out the recording, Caroline, if that's okay.
That's perfect, Hallie. And if you could copy and paste that script that you had on the screen for the initial approach for the informational interview, that would be fantastic too. We've had a request for that offline.
Great idea. Okay, so we will include both, everyone, afterwards. That's perfect. So the Excel sheet can really help you keep track and help you keep, everyone posted on the connections that they've made for you, all right? And then stay in touch with them. You can send them an article. You can refer someone to them, update them on your job search, whatever it is. But I love the article idea just as one example, because it's just a reason to reach out to someone. I have a client now who's in active job search mode, and he's just sending emails for the holidays. Happy holidays to you. I hope you have a good one. Any excuse sometimes, to reach out to someone, as long as you're professional about it and courteous and, short and sweet, it's great. You need to stay in front of them in some way. Caroline, anything to add there? Are we good, you think?
I think we're good.
Okay, cool. All right. So really quickly, if anyone needs additional assistance outside of what we send you as a follow-up with your job search, For informational interviews, your elevator speech, networking, anything else, I'd be happy to chat with you about our services. We do a complimentary consultation so you can learn more to find out if it's the right thing for you to do, okay? And that's our website there. And I want to just leave you all before we open it up for Q&A at the end before we close with final 2 slides here. So first of all, you know, whenever I talk with people about this, they're usually like, okay, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. But again, it goes back to the obstacles, that they feel too shy to do it or whatever it is. And I just wanted you to take a look at this quote here for a moment about overcoming obstacles. Because if you don't do this, you're just going to stay put and get the same old, okay? And I also wanted to tell you just a quick story, and then we'll go to the final slide. I had a client, Jamie. She was actually a VP at Holder Construction here in Atlanta. Of course, changed her name for confidentiality. But she conducted an informational interview with another VP at Kimberly-Clark. This was a couple years ago. And she's 48 at the time she was. The woman gave her an hour of her time and literally said to her at the end, everyone, that I have not had anyone do this with me before, and it was such a great idea. Jamie got a ton of information about Kimberly-Clark and was able to move forward in her job search and learn that Kimberly-Clark, she actually discovered that that wasn't the exact right thing for her, but she found that out before she applied, okay? So this is not something that's just for recent college grads, it's for anyone of any age and enormously helpful, okay? So I want you to just, you know, think about this last slide here for a moment, and go ahead, everyone, and feel free to type in any questions that you have. This is the quote that gets me past my fears and obstacles when I don't feel like going to that networking event, because sometimes that happens to me too, still to this day. But you need to remember that the greatest risk in life is not taking one in the first place. So no risk, no reward, right, Caroline?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll pause for a moment, and anyone can feel free to type in some questions, and we'll spend at least about 5 minutes answering those. We've got a few minutes past 5 minutes, I think, so should be fine.
All right, if anyone wants to direct those chat questions to myself or to Hallie, go ahead and pop in the chat window from the top of your screen and ask away.
I feel like there was one, Caroline, and it might be, I thought I saw one come across my screen, and I don't know if they come to me directly what I need to do.
It may, if you'll open the chat window, Hallie, and you can, there'll probably be a scroll up if you've passed through. It's already passed, perhaps.
Yes, okay, I see it now. So statistics on how many people actually land jobs through LinkedIn. You know what, I'll be honest, I don't know through LinkedIn. I bet that they, by now, because LinkedIn has been around for a long enough time, there probably are stats on that, but I don't know what they are. It's a great question, and if I can find the answer to that right afterwards today, we'll send that to you. But I bet if you Google it, you might be able to find some research on it. I'm sorry, I can't answer though directly. I don't know.
I did see that one come through, Hallie, and I actually, we were talking about recruiters and their use of LinkedIn. I haven't gotten to the bottom of that, but 93% of recruiters are using LinkedIn, and that's even a little while back, so I imagine it's grown even more and has grown pretty significantly each year, but 93% of recruiters are using LinkedIn to find individuals out there that might be appropriate for their openings.
Yeah, and actually I do remember reading a stat. They surveyed however many thousands of companies, I don't remember that number, but those companies reported, and this was at least 2 years ago, that up to 80% of their recruiting efforts were done through LinkedIn. 80%, it was really high.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big one. And think about it, everyone, it's easier. You go find the people you want instead of having to wade through hundreds of resumes. It's a lot easier, so.
It is.
Different way of doing it.
I have this question, and I'm not sure if you see it, Hallie. Do you find many informational interviews that were or are set up via executive recruiters? What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have not ever heard of that or, had a client, have that experience. Here's my guess. With recruiters, typically, they're getting paid by the company and they're kind of in sales, right? When they place someone in an organization, that's how they get paid. So I think that really good recruiters who cared about their clients and, were able to provide that kind of connection, they might do it. But I definitely would not make that assumption. And honestly, I'm not even sure I would ask a recruiter because they might think that you're less serious about your search. I don't know, Caroline, do you have a different opinion?
I would actually agree with you. I also have never heard of that an executive recruiter setting up an informational interview. But I will tell you this, a good executive recruiter will talk and have a conversation with a prospective client on the job seeker side about their interests, about their background. And so, maybe if they don't have something that's immediately available to match what the job requisitions they're working on, they'll have that relationship established initially. So when something that does have is a better fit comes along, they'll be able to go back to the person that they've met and spoken with and be a couple of steps ahead in the process. So that I think that informational, in that context, an informational interview is important, so they can find out a little bit more about what you do. You can find out more about their practice area. So directly with an executive recruiter might actually be appropriate.
Yeah, but the other way around, I think it would be too weird. I wouldn't try to go through recruiters, everyone, to set these up. I would do it on your own.
I would agree.
Yeah, that'd be too funky. Any other questions, everyone? Got a couple more minutes. It's fantastic sometimes when we have none because hopefully that means we covered what we needed to.
Let's see. We have a question from a caller and or a participant, I should say. Do you have suggestions for making a LinkedIn profile pop so that it will be noticed by recruiters? And any thoughts on hiring trends at large to mid-sized companies?
Okay, the hiring trends I might need to think about. I can't speak to that as much, I think, because we tend to work one-on-one with just a select, handful of clients over time. So that one I'm not sure. Caroline, you could speak to that one maybe.
Yeah.
The first one with LinkedIn, definitely you need to have a professional picture. And I know that sounds basic, but I've seen so many that are not. And you absolutely have to have a picture. Some people will say, well, what if I don't want to have one? No, you need to have one. Absolutely. The other thing is keywords. So you need to have the keywords in there. If someone was searching for you, what keywords would they use? Atlanta interior architect or whatever it is. So you need to research and read several job descriptions to understand the language that's being used in those job descriptions and make sure that those keywords are in your profile so that you're searchable. And then even though LinkedIn is not like Word where you can easily, at least it wasn't the last time I checked, I could be wrong, where you can easily bold and underline and all of that, there are ways that you can make it easier to read your profile, like by using those little carets. You can use dashes. So I would make your profile very easy to scan as well so that they can quickly and easily find out, okay, your background, your experience, your expertise. And the summary statement is a big, important part of that at the top. You really want to make that compelling. You can make it more personal than you would on your resume. You can use first person. You never use first person on your resume. And that can help draw people in as well to then continue reading.
I think that's a great point. Using those keywords, honestly, when I'm helping alumni to use the Georgia Tech Alumni Association LinkedIn group to find people in areas they might be interested in, we're using keywords, we're using company names, but those keywords are so critical so that you're communicating the language of the job that you want to have.
Yeah.
And in relation to the hiring trends, let me just say generally, and I'm going to connect with this person offline, but I'd say generally to look at the industry trends. You know, there are certainly certain industries that are doing quite well in different markets, and you know, that may be more of an indicator than even the size of the organization. So we can talk about that offline.
Okay, good. If we've got one more that I'm actually just replying to right now, Caroline,
okay.
We can take a second, I'll say it out loud, and then we can start to wrap up. Informational interviews, do you advise doing them in person, on the phone, or via email? My first choice would be in person or Skype. Second choice would be phone, email, third choice. So better to get some information than nothing, but email does not allow you to really connect with that person and allow them to get to know you, and you make a great impression. So try not to do that if you can avoid it, but worst case, at least you're getting some information. And then one other quick one, examples of the type of questions to ask in an informational interview. Things like, what is a typical day like? What type of person succeeds in this position? What experience and talents are required? What trends are in the industry that I may not know about? And by the way, everyone, you can Google example informational interview questions and you'll get some good ones. I've actually found some good ones online too. So do a Google search as well.
Perfect. And I'm going to connect. We have, since we are running at the end of our time, a little bit over, if you had a question that was not answered here and put it in the chat window, just shoot me an email to career@gtalumni.org. And we'll get that answered for you regarding this. Between Hallie and myself, we will certainly get you an answer back. So career@gtalumni.org. So thank you all very much for your time today. Thank you for participating. Hallie, thanks so much for leading us on this Friday.
No problem. My pleasure. Good luck, everyone, and let us know if you need additional help.
All right. Have a great weekend, you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.